Friends, it had to happen. It's the inevitable bedroom episode. If I had an intro, that would have gone there. Hi, and welcome back to The Library is Open. Another brand new episode. If you haven't been here before, you need a library card, applications at the front desk. Make sure you wear gloves. So I've recently been taking you on a tour around my house, various rooms. I've done both sides of the sofa. There's been one in a bathroom with the good lighting. This less so. But yeah, and you may remember from a previous video I described my room as being the same colours as the cover art for Parallel Lives by Phyllis Rose, pink and green, and need to say more. I don't tell lies. Yeah, so this is a night video. Normally I film during the day or in the morning, but I just wanted to do this tonight because it's kind of on my brain, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. So I am, and that's what you're seeing right now. I am sat on a futon. I do sleep on a futon, which seemed like a really great space saver quite a long time ago, but see, inevitably what happens is I don't fold the futon up, so actually it hasn't saved any space at all, and it's not all that comfortable anymore. So, you know, choices have consequences is my point, I think. And yeah, I'm not really going anywhere else with that. I just wanted to let you know that next time you think of having a futon, what other choices are bad? Ner's a bad choice. You know that the body air thing where you put it on and it like burns your ear off. Yeah, nah. Ner's a bad choice. Futons are a bad choice. I told you, I'm having that done on t-shirts. That'll be my merch. Nah. Anyway, so today is a double bill episode, which I did first as a one-off, but now I kind of like it, you know, because I feel less pressured to say loads and potentially give you spoilers about things if about one particular book. If there's two that I think are quite either complementary or really different, I think that kind of works quite nicely as a dynamic. And I'm calling this episode, well, I'm not calling it this, but in my head this is what it's called, American Dialogues. Sounds like a unit you'd do on an English Lit degree, doesn't it? But for the plain fact that both are American novels I'm going to talk about, and both are set roughly a century apart, I'd say, ish. Both were good for different reasons. I think I prefer one over the other, and I'll explain that. But I think both are important historically, if that makes sense. Well, let's find out, shall we, if it does make sense indeed. So I'll talk about the two novels. I'll do them independent. I'll do them separately. So the first one is, you probably saw this on my isolation book haul. This is Property by Valerie Martin, which is, she's quite a slim lass, quite big writing. I powered through this because I realised I haven't been sniffing for a while as well. I'm going to start sniffing again. Oh, it's so good. It's like you know, a controlled substance that just smells good. Answers on a postcard. This is great. This is set on a sugar plantation in Louisiana in the 1800s, and the main character is Manon Godet, who's unhappily married to the owner of the plantation. And he's been... you find this out really early, by the way, so... As I will always say in the description if there's like massive spoilers, so don't worry on that score. Yeah, she's unhappily married to the owner of the plantation, and he's been having extramarital relations with one of their servants. Only it's the 1800s in the Deep South, so she's a slave. A black girl called Sarah, and between them they've had two children, a little boy who is deaf, and a newborn little baby girl. And it's sort of about how Manon sort of relates the novel. So she's our sort of protagonist, as it were, but it's difficult because she's a Sorry, that must look really dodgy. I was just scutching about. Told you, futons. She's the person that narrates the book, but it's really quite hard to empathise with her at all because she's not a great character. No, she is a great character because she's really nuanced, and your allegiances shift constantly, but she's not a very nice person. So obviously the main issue here is a lot about slavery and enforced servitude and stuff, which is, it can be a little bit rough going at the time, because even, you know, when you see it in films or you read it in books and stuff, you just, well, if you're any kind of decent human being, you go, oh god, this is just so uncomfortable, the idea of slavery, and the way that, you know, black people are talked about is dead on accurate, but really, really uncomfortable. And what I think's great about this, though, is the way that the title works on two levels and speaks to the willful dissonance that people have about concepts is not the right word, but ideas or practices. So, for instance, you might be lulled into, as everyone I was, I mean, it's kind of the point, thinking that the property of the title relates to the slavery relationship. Like Sarah was given as a gift, isn't that horrific, to a man on her marriage. So technically she belongs to her, rightly or wrongly, obviously wrongly. And so it's about ownership, you know, who owns these people. But actually, the sort of dual plot line is about Manon sort of confronting the ideas around women being property to their husbands. And where it gets really interesting is where she sort of recognises that that's the wrong thing, but can't make the connection with slavery. E.g., like, if you object to a man owning a woman, where's that cognitive dissonance that you don't get that white people shouldn't own other people of other races? Do you know what I mean? It's like, it kind of works on two levels. So, and I think that's actually what's really interesting, because it makes the characters really flawed and ultimately kind of frustrating as well. But you also feel like you've got the upper hand there because you get it. But obviously that's what Valerie Martin, who's the author's, tried to do with that. Sorry, we got cut off there because my phone decided it was just going to make decisions for itself. And pat that in. So where was I? Yes, would absolutely recommend Property. I think it's an important read. It was the winner of the Women's Prize for 2003, which is why I actually came across it, because I was buying something else at the Waterstones. It's a new one. And so obviously I got this a while ago, and I needed to get my money over a tenner, because then you get a stamp on your card and you can collect points and get free stuff when you get to like 10 points. So yeah, and I think it's they're doing a promotion on the Women's Prize for fiction in at the moment, or they were, and so there's like a load of the previous winners laid out and stuff. So yeah, this is great. Obviously, I say obviously, it makes you really root for the character of Sarah and, you know, her fellow slaves and stuff. But what it cleverly does is, by not moralising, in the sense of, moralising is the wrong word, by not sort of pointing out directly how stupid the whole system is and how based on oppression it is, they actually bring you to that conclusion yourself simply by pointing out vicariously the hypocrisy of the other characters and how they work to actively suppress their property, which I think it bears repeating is a gross concept. Gross. So yeah, Valerie Martin's Property is great. Definitely recommend this one. Really, really do. The other one, which is set 100 years approximately later in, well, it was published in 34, It's called Now in November by Josephine Johnson, and it was also a prize winner. This won the Pulitzer Prize. You know, funny is it? Because my instinct to say Pulitzer, but that could just be my accent. But it's Pulitzer Prize. And the year, did it win the year it was released? Or was it the year after? That's irrelevant. You can look that up. And this is set during the Depression, or rather just after. Well, during and after. And it's about a family living in the Dust Bowl, which basically they were a farming family, and you know the droughts and the sort of economic collapse made it really, really difficult for anyone to survive or make money or even food or anything like that. And it's narrated by one of three sisters. There's three sisters in this family, a mother and father, and she sort of is reflecting back on her, well, I mean, from the November, which is how the book opens and also gives it its name. Now in November, I can see our years as a whole. So she's looking back from the autumn. It sort of starts in spring and then moves through the year as things sort of get progressively worse for the family. There's her older sister is a very sort of highly spirited and is working against the idea that women are subjugated to men. She very much wants to be allowed to pursue all the things that men are, but her father won't allow that to happen, and she sort of rebels against this by becoming increasingly erratic and in some ways towards the end increasingly unstable. There's the youngest daughter, who is kind of seems this like idealized paragon in a way. They get a farmhand comes to live with them, and he falls headfirst in love with her, although all three sisters are in love with him. And then our narrator, Margaret, is sort of plonked in the middle of that, feeling things very vividly, but not almost immobile, not able to make choices and so on and so forth. It's quite tragic, actually, this, but I think that's kind of the point. I did enjoy this, but I remember very much reading it thinking, oh, this is like a book you'd read in school, if that makes sense. Do you know the sort of, and that's not a criticism, there were some great books I read in school, but it does very much have that feel. Is that like, you know, you'd do like a class read or something, then you'd sit and discuss the issues, because they always give you like issue-based things, don't they, at school? I mean, I get it, because obviously you're supposed to analyse the cultural context and so on and so forth. But I was sort of reminded that there's a lot of sort of talk about nature as well, which some of it's beautiful. And what Judith Johnson, who this was her first novel, by the way, she was very young when she wrote it, and it brought her a lot of acclaim. Well, clearly she won the Pulitzer Prize, but Pulitzer, sorry. She sort of pits humanity against nature, and she uses nature very subtly, though, not in like an annoying way, to sort of mirror the fortunes, or rather misfortunes, of the family and the nation as a whole. So as a sort of, I don't know, pastoral slice of American history, if you will. And it's really, really interesting, actually, when you compare the two books now, looking at the relative wealth of the plantations versus the post-depression Dust Bowl sort of farming, which are, you know, not unrelated, different parts of the country, admittedly. 100 years on, it's really like charting the fortunes of a nation through its sort of historical lineage, I guess, or something. And it's weird that I chose to read them back to back, because I hadn't initially planned to do that, but it just kind of felt like I should. So yeah, this is good. It's good, and I can see why it was lauded at the time. And they say, one of the reviewers said, if Emily Dickinson had turned to prose, she would have written a book like this. To a certain extent, yeah. But I'm not. It's going to be another one of those that I'm saying I'm glad I read it, because of what it's about and the themes and so on and so forth. But I'm not going to say I enjoyed it per se, whereas I really enjoyed Property. Like, I wanted to know what was going to happen next in this story. As much as I hated some of the characters, I was compelled. Whereas Now in November just felt more meandering, in the sense that because everything was so lyrical and beautifully talked about, and, you know, that nature sort of metaphor extended, it almost lulls you sometimes into going, yeah. Although that being said, it has been compared in the back to another book in pastoral novels called Pilgrim at Tinker Creek by the writer Annie Dillard, which I couldn't stand. I read that about a year ago and I hated it. Because that's the thing, isn't it? It's like sometimes writing is textbook beautiful and gorgeously composed, but if it doesn't grab you, that's kind of irrelevant, isn't it? Well, I mean, debatably, different things grab different people, but I much prefer this to that, and not only because this is quite short, sort of moving through the seasons as it does, but I mean, she says herself, this will give you an idea as to the pace of the novel, this feeling of waiting, of life suspended and held in a narrow circle. So, yeah, that kind of pretty much sums it up. And I don't know if you remember in the last video when I talked about Before the Fall by Noah Hawley, which obviously is a modern novel and it's a suspense thriller, where I said that the characters sometimes felt a slight remove, so you couldn't get under their skin. I kind of felt a little bit like that. There's a sort of detachment in the way that she describes what happens to the sisters and the family, which is ultimately quite tragic in many ways. But yeah, it's really hard to sort of just go, oh, that's sad. Do anything but say, oh, that's sad. Whereas, like, other novels are able to pierce you with their character and get you to really feel something for them. But maybe that's just me. So yeah, I apologize I haven't given much of a plot resume for Now in November, because there really isn't one. It's just about their fortunes of family. There are moments of tragedy. I'm not going to spoil that because that would be a spoiler. But it's just more wistful and reflective, and a series of increasingly horrible things happen to the family as they're sort of forced to deal with life in America post-depression. But on the whole, I'm really glad I read them both, and I'm glad I read them both in tandem, and I think I'd like to do that more, sort of like pseudo-thematic things, and examine what that looks like. Because obviously I'm aware as well that Judith was writing actually at the time of this happening, whereas Valerie Martin's book was reflecting 2 centuries on. So obviously there will be differences in writing, so, you know, maybe that comparison's not fair, but hey, it's my channel, so there you go. So yeah, that was this week's Double Bill American Dialogues. If you do, I recommend you get hold of Property, and if you do, let me know what you think. If you do manage to go, actually, I'm quite interested in Now in November, also drop your thoughts on that. I'd be interested in that. And yeah, next episode we'll be back to one book. I'm not sure what that's going to be yet, because I didn't actually plan that one ahead, but who can say life is full of surprises, as Cilla Black once said. So thank you for joining me in my gracious bedroom. You'll be able to see, by the way, all the books behind me. That's like one wall, there's loads. They're just piled places because I'm a messy reader. And I will do you like a little tour at one point of where all the books are kept. If you'd like that, if so, drop me a little line. And yeah, thanks for being here. So from my first nighttime vlog to you, wherever you may be, take care of yourselves. Put your library cards safe so you can get it out ready for next time. Keep turning those pages and stay safe. Much love and goodbye. That was good, that, wasn't it?